I found out I was fired on a Tuesday. I found out everything else over the next 3 weeks. My manager called me into her office at 9:47 in the morning, and by 10:15 I was walking out of the building with a cardboard box and a severance package that felt more like an insult than compensation. The company was downsizing and my entire department was being eliminated, she said, like that made it better somehow. Like knowing 15 other people were also losing their jobs was supposed to soften the blow. I sat in my car in the parking lot for maybe 20 minutes just staring at the building I'd walked into every morning for the past 4 years. My hands were shaking when I called my boyfriend. He answered on the 4th ring and I could hear voices in the background, that specific kind of ambient noise that meant he was somewhere public. I got fired, I said, and my voice cracked on the word fired even though I'd been trying to hold it together. There was a pause and then he said, "Oh man, that sucks, babe," but in this distracted tone like I just told him I missed the bus or something. "I'm kind of in the middle of something right now," he continued. "Can we talk about this later when I get home?" I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "Later," I repeated. "Yeah, I should be back around 7 and we can figure out what you're gonna do about it." He said it like that, what you're gonna do about it, not what we're gonna do. Not how can I help. Not do you want me to come home right now. Just what you're gonna do. I told him okay and hung up before he could say anything else. Then I just sat there in my car watching people walk in and out of the building, people who still had jobs, people whose whole lives hadn't just been upended before lunch. I called my friend Ted because I didn't know what else to do and he answered immediately. "What's up?" he said, and I told him I got fired and before I could say anything else he said, "Where are you right now?" "Still in the parking lot," I said. "Stay there," he told me, "I'm coming to get you." Ted showed up 23 minutes later even though he worked on the other side of town. He must have left the second we hung up. He pulled into the spot next to mine and got out and came over to my car and opened my door and just stood there for a second looking at me. Then he said, "Come on, get out," and I did and he pulled me into a hug right there in the parking lot. I started crying then, really crying, the kind where you can't breathe properly and your whole body shakes. He didn't say anything, just held on until I was done. When I finally pulled back, he took the cardboard box from my passenger seat and put it in his car and said, "You're not driving right now, leave your car here and we'll get it later." We went to this diner we used to go to in college, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tastes like it's been sitting on the burner for 6 hours. Ted ordered us both food even though I said I wasn't hungry and then he just let me talk. I told him about how blindsided I felt, how I'd just gotten a good performance review 2 months ago, how I had no idea this was coming. He listened and asked questions and didn't once check his phone or act like he had somewhere else to be. At some point I realized it was past 1 in the afternoon and said, "Shouldn't you be at work?" And he shrugged and said I took the rest of the day off. I told him he didn't have to do that and he said I know but I wanted to. We spent the afternoon driving around and running errands I didn't need to run, just so I wouldn't have to go home and sit alone in my apartment spiraling. Ted went with me to return some library books and pick up dry cleaning and get groceries I didn't really need. Normal boring tasks that felt impossible to do alone right then. Around 5 he asked if I wanted to go back to my place or come hang at his apartment for a while and I said his place because I didn't want to be alone yet. We ordered pizza and watched bad reality TV and he didn't try to give me advice or tell me it would all work out or any of those useless platitudes people say when they don't know what else to say. He just sat there with me and made sure I ate something and occasionally made jokes about the people on the show. My boyfriend texted around 6:30 saying he was running late and wouldn't be home until 9. I showed Ted the message and he looked at it for a long time before handing my phone back without comment. I went home around 8:30 and walked into an empty apartment and sat on the couch and waited. He got home at almost 10, came in carrying takeout bags and said, "Hey babe, got us some Thai food." Like it was just a normal Tuesday. Like I hadn't been sitting there for over an hour waiting to talk to him about losing my job. He put the food on the coffee table and started unpacking containers and said, "So what happened? They just let you go." I explained the whole thing again, the downsizing, the severance, all of it. He nodded along while eating pad thai straight from the container, and when I finished he said, "Well, at least you got severance, right? And honestly you've been saying you wanted to leave that job anyway, so maybe this is a blessing in disguise." I stared at him because I had never once said I wanted to leave that job. I liked that job. I was good at that job. He kept eating and said you should take a couple weeks to decompress and then start applying places, shouldn't be too hard to find something else with your experience. Then he started talking about his day, some meeting that went well, some idea he had for a project, and I realized he was done talking about my job loss. Just done. Like we'd thoroughly covered it in those 3 minutes and now we could move on to more interesting topics. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept thinking about how Ted had dropped everything to come sit with me in a parking lot and how my boyfriend had been annoyed I'd interrupted his afternoon. How Ted had taken a whole day off work and my boyfriend couldn't be bothered to come home even an hour early. I told myself I was being unfair, that people process things differently, that my boyfriend was probably just trying to stay positive and not make me feel worse. But something felt wrong in a way I couldn't quite name yet. The next few days were strange. I spent them updating my resume and starting to look at job postings and trying not to panic about money. My boyfriend went to work like normal and came home like normal, and we existed in the apartment together, but something had shifted for me. I started noticing things I'd been ignoring. Like how when I tried to talk to him about being worried about finances, he said you'll find something soon and changed the subject. Or how when I asked if he'd mind covering a bit more of the rent this month since I'd only get 2 more weeks of salary, he got this tight look on his face and said I guess, but we should probably look at cutting back on some stuff, and I realized he meant my stuff. The subscriptions I paid for, the groceries I usually bought, the dinners out I usually suggested. Ted texted me every morning asking how I was doing and if I needed anything. He sent me job postings that seemed relevant and offered to look over my resume. He came over one evening with his laptop and helped me update my LinkedIn profile and practice answering interview questions. My boyfriend was home that night, sitting on the couch watching TV while Ted and I worked at the kitchen table. He didn't offer to help. Didn't even really acknowledge that Ted was there except to say hey man when he arrived and later when he left. After Ted was gone, my boyfriend said you don't need to have him over here all the time, like it was an imposition that my friend was helping me with something he himself couldn't be bothered to do. I got called for a couple interviews in the second week and they went okay but not great. I was off my game, anxious and second-guessing myself, and I could tell the interviewers sensed it. After the second one, I sat in my car and called Ted and told him I'd blown it. He listened to me explain everything I'd said wrong and then said you're being too hard on yourself, you just lost your job like 10 days ago, nobody expects you to be perfect right now. It was such a small thing but it made me want to cry because he got it. He understood that I wasn't okay yet and that was fine. My boyfriend kept saying things like you just need to be more confident and you're psyching yourself out and just act like you don't need the job and they'll want you more, like it was all a mind game I was losing instead of a genuinely difficult situation. In the third week, I was scrolling through Instagram late at night while my boyfriend was in the shower, and I saw that my friend Jenna had posted photos from someone's birthday party from the weekend before. The weekend right after I got fired, when I'd barely left the apartment. I almost scrolled past, but then I recognized our living room in the background of one photo. The specific awful painting my boyfriend's mom had given us that hung above the couch. My stomach dropped. I zoomed in and yes, that was definitely our apartment. There were people I recognized vaguely, friends of my boyfriend's from work. There was my boyfriend in one photo, laughing, holding a beer. There was a girl I didn't know with her arm around him in another shot. I went through Jenna's whole feed and found more photos. The party had apparently been on Saturday night. The Saturday night my boyfriend had told me he needed to go into the office to catch up on a project. The Saturday night I'd been lying on the couch in my pajamas feeling sorry for myself while he'd thrown a party in our apartment. Our apartment. And he'd lied about where he was. I sat there staring at my phone screen feeling like I'd been punched in the chest. The shower turned off and I heard him singing something off-key, and I had this surreal moment where I didn't know if I should confront him immediately or just go to sleep and pretend I hadn't seen anything. I waited until he came out of the bathroom. He was in his boxers drying his hair with a towel and he looked so normal, so familiar, and I said, "Did you have people over here on Saturday?" He froze for just a second, then continued drying his hair and said, "What?" "I saw photos on Instagram," I told him, "photos from our apartment from Saturday night when you said you were at the office." There was a long pause and then he laughed, not like it was funny but like I was being ridiculous. "Oh that," he said. "Yes, some people from work stopped by after we finished up, it wasn't a big deal." "It looked like a party," I said. "It looked like maybe 20 people in our apartment." He sat down on the bed and said, "Okay, yes, a few people came over, but I didn't tell you because you were in a bad headspace and I didn't want to bother you with it." I asked him why he would throw a party a week after I lost my job without even mentioning it to me, and he said it wasn't about you. "Some of us from work just wanted to blow off steam and I figured you didn't want to deal with a bunch of people you barely know when you're going through stuff." I pointed out that they were in our apartment, the apartment I paid half the rent on even though I just lost my income, and he got defensive. "I pay half too," he said, "and honestly you've been kind of a downer lately so I didn't think you'd want to be around people anyway." "A downer." I repeated the word slowly. "Yes," he said, like he was relieved to finally say it. "You've been moping around here for weeks and I get that you're upset but life goes on and I can't just put everything on hold because you lost your job." I didn't even know what to say to that. I asked him who the girl was, the one with her arm around him in the photos, and he said that's just Sarah from accounting. Just Sarah from accounting with her arm around my boyfriend at a party in our apartment that I didn't know about. I started to say something else, but he cut me off and said, "Look, I'm sorry I didn't tell you about it, but you're blowing this way out of proportion." Then he got into bed and turned off his lamp like the conversation was over. I lay there in the dark next to him thinking about how Ted had taken a day off work to sit with me, and my boyfriend couldn't even tell me he was throwing a party in my own home. I didn't mention it to anyone for a couple days. I felt stupid and couldn't figure out if I was overreacting or if this was actually as messed up as it seemed. But it kept eating at me, the lying and the hiding things and the way he'd said I was being a downer. On Thursday, I met Ted for coffee and I must have looked rough because the first thing he said was, "What's wrong?" I told him about the party and the photos and the girl from accounting and the whole conversation afterward. He listened with this increasingly dark expression, and when I finished he said, "Let me get this straight. You lost your job and a week later he threw a party at your place and didn't tell you, and now he's mad at you for being upset about it." When he said it like that, it sounded even worse. I tried to explain that maybe my boyfriend had a point about me being in a bad headspace, and maybe I would have been a downer at the party, and Ted just looked at me and said, "Do you hear yourself right now? You lost your job. You're allowed to be upset. You're allowed to not want to be social. And if he wanted to see his friends, that's fine, but lying about it and hiding it from you is not okay." Then he said something that made my chest tight. He said, "You know, I've been watching this for a while now, and I've tried not to say anything because it's not my place, but I don't think he's good for you." I asked what he meant, and Ted said, "I mean, he doesn't support you, he doesn't prioritize you, he gets annoyed when you need anything from him, and now he's lying to you and blaming you for being hurt by it. That's not how someone treats a person they love." I wanted to argue, but I couldn't find the words. Ted reached across the table and put his hand over mine and said, "You deserve someone who shows up for you. Not just when it's easy or convenient, but when it's hard. When you're scared or hurting or just having a bad day. You deserve someone who doesn't make you feel like your problems are an inconvenience." I felt tears starting and tried to blink them back, and Ted said, "Hey, it's okay, you don't have to figure it all out right now." I asked him why he was always there for me, why he dropped everything to help me, why he cared so much when my own boyfriend barely seemed to. He was quiet for a long moment, and then he said, "Because you matter to me. Because seeing you hurt makes me hurt. Because if I could take all this stress and worry off your shoulders, I would do it in a heartbeat." Something in his voice made me look up and really see his face. He was looking at me with this expression I couldn't quite read, but it made my heart beat faster. "Ted," I started to say, but then his phone rang and the moment broke. He glanced at it and said, "Sorry, I have to take this, it's work." He stepped outside to answer, and I sat there trying to process what had just happened and what I thought I'd seen in his face. When he came back, he said he had to get to the office for something urgent, but did I want to meet up this weekend? I said yes, and we made plans, and I drove home thinking about all the ways Ted had been there for me over the past 3 weeks and all the ways my boyfriend hadn't. That night my boyfriend came home late and I was already in bed pretending to be asleep. I heard him moving around in the dark, getting ready for bed, and then his phone lit up on the nightstand. I wasn't trying to snoop, but from where I was lying I could see the notification. It was a text from someone named Sarah with a heart emoji next to her name. The preview said, "Miss you, when can we?" and then it cut off. I felt like all the air had left my lungs. I waited until he was asleep and then carefully took his phone into the bathroom. I knew his passcode because we'd always been open about that stuff, or at least I thought we had. The texts with Sarah went back months. Months. Long before I lost my job. They weren't explicitly sexual, but they were intimate in a way that made my hands shake as I scrolled. Inside jokes and pet names and references to times they'd hung out without me knowing. Plans to meet up. Photos of her I definitely hadn't seen him receive. And then more recent ones from the past few weeks where she was sympathizing with him about having to deal with me being depressed and unemployed. Where he called me exhausting and said he didn't know how much more he could take. Where she said he deserved better and he replied with, "Maybe you're right." I took screenshots of everything even though it made me feel sick. Then I put his phone back and went into the living room and sat on the couch in the dark. I thought about confronting him right then, but I didn't have the energy for whatever fight would follow. I thought about texting Ted, but it was 3 in the morning. I thought about a lot of things, but mostly I just sat there feeling numb and stupid and wondering how I'd missed this. How long had it been going on? Was the party really a work thing, or had it been for her? How many times had he lied about where he was or who he was with? How long had he been telling her I was exhausting while pretending to my face that he cared about me losing my job? I must have fallen asleep on the couch because I woke up to my boyfriend shaking my shoulder saying, "Why are you out here?" I looked up at him and felt nothing but tired. I asked him who Sarah was, and his face did this thing where he tried to look confused, but I saw the flash of panic first. "Sarah from accounting," he said slowly. "The same one you got weird about after the party." I told him I'd seen his texts and watched his expression change from panic to anger to something calculating. "How did you see my texts?" he asked, and I said that's what you're worried about right now, how I saw them, not what they say. He ran his hand through his hair and said, "Okay, look, Sarah and I are friends. That's it. We work together and we talk, and yes, maybe I vented to her about some stuff, but that doesn't mean anything." I asked him what stuff he'd vented about, and he said, "Just the stress of you losing your job and how it's been affecting our relationship." "Affecting our relationship," I repeated. "Yes," he said, like it was obvious, "it's been hard on both of us." I showed him the screenshots I'd taken. The ones where he called me exhausting. The ones where she said he deserved better and he agreed. The ones with the inside jokes and the plans to meet up and all of it. He looked at them and I watched him trying to figure out what to say. Finally he said, "I never cheated on you. Those are just texts. We're just friends, and sometimes friends vent to each other about their relationships. That's normal." I asked him if he thought it was normal to hide a whole friendship from your partner and make plans behind their back and call them exhausting to someone else. He said, "I didn't hide anything, you never asked about her. And maybe if you weren't so self-absorbed right now you would have noticed I needed support too. This has been hard on me too, you know. Supporting you through all this." I actually laughed at that. It came out harsh and bitter and his face tightened. "What exactly have you been supporting me through?" I asked. "You came home late the day I got fired. You couldn't be bothered to help me with my resume or practice interviews. You threw a party in our apartment and lied about it. You've been complaining to another woman about how exhausting I am while I'm going through the worst month of my adult life. That's not support." He said, "I've been here, haven't I? I haven't left. I'm still in this relationship even though you've been impossible to deal with." Like he wanted credit for not abandoning me while I was struggling. Like that was the bar. I thought about Ted sitting with me in that parking lot. Ted taking a day off work. Ted helping with my resume and my LinkedIn and my interview prep. Ted texting me every morning. Ted saying I deserve someone who shows up for me. I looked at my boyfriend standing there waiting for me to thank him for the bare minimum, and I felt something finally click into place. I told him I wanted him to leave. He said, "What?" like he'd misheard me. I said, "I want you to leave, get your stuff and go stay somewhere else while I figure out what I'm doing." He said, "You're overreacting, we can talk about this." I said, "There's nothing to talk about, I'm done." He stared at me like I'd grown a second head and said, "You're done, you're breaking up with me over some texts. Over me having a friend." I said, "No, I'm breaking up with you because you've made me feel like garbage for needing support during a crisis. Because you lied to me and hid things from me and complained about me to another woman. Because you've shown me exactly how little you care and I'm choosing to believe you." He tried arguing with me for a while, but I just kept saying I want you to leave until finally he did. He grabbed some clothes and his laptop and said, "Fine, we'll talk when you've calmed down and can be rational about this." After he left I called Ted, and when he answered I just said, "It's over, I ended it." There was a pause and then he said, "Are you okay?" and I said, "I don't know, but I think I will be." He asked if I wanted company and I said yes. He was at my apartment in 20 minutes even though it was barely 7 in the morning and I was pretty sure he hadn't even gone to work yet. When I opened the door he took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug, and I cried for the second time in 3 weeks while he held me. I told him everything about the texts and the conversation and how my boyfriend had tried to make it seem like I was overreacting. Ted listened and his jaw got tighter and tighter, and when I finished he said, "I'm proud of you." "For what?" I asked. "For knowing you deserve better," he said. "For not letting him convince you this was your fault." I asked him what I was supposed to do now, and he said, "Whatever you need to do, but you don't have to do it alone." Over the next few days Ted helped me figure out logistics. My now ex-boyfriend tried texting and calling, but I didn't respond. He tried showing up at the apartment, but I didn't let him in. He finally sent a long message about how I was throwing away 2 years over nothing and I'd regret this, and he'd been nothing but patient with me. I showed it to Ted and he said, "Sounds like you dodged a bullet." I was starting to think he was right. I got a job offer at the end of the 4th week. It wasn't my dream job, but it was a good company with better pay than my old position. Ted took me out to celebrate, and over dinner I found myself really looking at him. Really seeing him. The way he smiled when I told him about the offer. The way he'd been checking in on me constantly without being overbearing. The way he knew exactly when I needed someone to listen and when I needed someone to distract me. I asked him what he'd meant that day at the coffee shop when he said I mattered to him. He got quiet and then said, "Do you really want to know?" I said yes. Ted put down his fork and looked at me directly. He said, "I've been in love with you for probably 2 years now. Maybe longer. And I've watched you with him and tried to be happy for you because you seemed happy, or at least I told myself you did. But these past few weeks, seeing how he treated you when you needed him, watching him make you feel small and burdensome, it's been killing me. Because you're not a burden. You're not exhausting. You're amazing and strong and dealing with impossible stuff with so much grace, and you deserve someone who sees that. Who sees you." I sat there processing this, and he said, "I'm not telling you this because I expect anything from you or because I think this is my chance or whatever. You just asked and I'm tired of not being honest about it. You can do whatever you want with that information and nothing between us has to change if you don't want it to." I thought about everything that had happened over the past month. I thought about who had shown up and who hadn't. I thought about Ted's face when he'd arrived at that parking lot and the way my ex had said it wasn't a big deal. I thought about feeling cared for and feeling like an inconvenience and how different those things were. I reached across the table and took Ted's hand and said, "I think I need some time to process everything, but I need you to know that these past few weeks you've shown me what it actually means when someone cares about you. When someone shows up. And I don't want to jump into anything right now because I'm still kind of a mess and I need to figure my stuff out, but I also don't want to lose this. Whatever this is. He squeezed my hand and said, "You're not going to lose me, I'm not going anywhere." It's been 2 months now since I got fired and 1 month since I started the new job. My ex tried a few more times to get me to talk to him but eventually gave up. I heard through mutual friends that he and Sarah from accounting are officially together now, which confirmed everything I'd suspected. I don't feel as bad about it as I thought I would. Mostly I just feel relieved that I'm not in that relationship anymore. Ted and I are taking things slow, but we're taking them somewhere. We haven't labeled anything yet and I'm fine with that. He still texts me every morning. Still shows up when I need him. Still makes me feel like my problems matter instead of like I'm too much to handle. I'm not sure where this goes, but I know it already feels different than anything I had before. Better. Easier. More real. Sometimes I think about that day in the parking lot when I called him and he just came. No questions or conditions or making me feel guilty for needing help. Just came. And I think about how I almost missed this because I was so busy trying to make things work with someone who didn't want to put in any effort. How I'd convinced myself that emotional unavailability was normal and that asking for support was asking too much. How close I came to staying in that situation because I thought I didn't deserve better. I'm glad I was wrong. I'm glad I finally saw what everyone else could apparently see. I'm glad I had someone in my life who showed me what it looks like when someone actually cares instead of just saying they do. The job thing worked out and the relationship thing worked out, and I'm trying not to overthink what comes next. For now, I'm just glad I'm here instead of there. That's enough.